they seek power, they seek dominion, they seek wealth and authority. And they understand that when humanity has access to expanding wisdom, to new perspectives, to uncommon and enlightening knowledge, then this makes their job much more difficult. And so it is in their favour if this wisdom was removed from the human field, from the human context, and there could be no experience of it. Yet this presents them with the conundrum. How? Hi, I'm Muzz iEvolv. Thank you very much for being here again this week. Please take a moment now to like, share, and later, if you feel inclined, I'd love to read your comment. There's been a bit of an uptick in the readers of this book, so it seems that it's gaining a little bit of popularity. And if you haven't got your copy yet, then now is the time. There's an audiobook also available, and it's an instant download, short read, and will accelerate or even make possible your connection with your guides. Doesn't matter who you are, what your experience is, even if you believe in this particular life cycle, connecting with your guides isn't in the blueprint. It absolutely is. In fact, that's part of the journey of humanity, is to connect with the ethereal, with the extra dimensionality, and your guides is like really the greatest place to begin that journey. If you have read this book, I would love to hear your feedback. So if you're watching this now and you have actually gone through that book, I would love to hear what you thought of the book. Was it an enjoyable read? Was it helpful? And what kind of successes or changes have you experienced from reading this book? Of course, the good old faithful, still here, the 3 awakenings that save humanity. This book will always be dear in my heart because it was my first spiritual book. It was actually my 4th book I've written. No, maybe my 5th book I wrote, but it was my first spiritual book. And it was the first book that I wrote because I had something to say. And it wasn't just a business adventure. It was literally because I had a message inside of me trying to get out. And I realized later that it was my guides and it was their influence that made me first sit down and start typing the words of this. And it has grown into everything that I do now. Began just with the first few words of this book. The links to both of those books you will see below this video. Also, you can do a private channeling with me. The link for that also is below this video. And if you would like a way that you can support me, I have my membership, which I haven't mentioned for a long time. There's 3 levels. You get the transcripts, the audios, and the videos of every channeling I've done in the past and every channeling that I will do in the future. I haven't updated that site for a while, sorry about that, but I will prioritize to get that done in the next week. On to today's topic, and it is, should I ignore the Flawed Guru? Greetings and thank you for the question. Should I ignore the Flawed Guru? We have decided to channel on this today because of an insidious phenomenon which is occurring in the Earth human culture at this time. And we wish to contribute in some way to the prevention or the preservation of available wisdom. So, let us begin in this way. All gurus are flawed because all gurus are in a human reincarnation cycle. So, if they were perfect beings, then they would not be here. And this does not imply that once they have left the Earth human cycle and progressed to some higher realm where they are yet again in a new incarnation cycle, possibly as a different being on a different planet in a higher density, it does not mean that now they are perfect. Because depending on your definitions and on your perspective, you are not perfect until you have fully realize that you are the one, and then coalesced back into that identity. It is only then that you are truly, in all perspectives, from all definitions, perfect. Because until that occurs, you are still living in some context within an illusion, believing that there is more than one, believing or at least experiencing that there is separation. So, all gurus, regardless of who they are flawed in some context. This includes all of the great prophets and masters from your human history. But for this discussion, we are not speaking about those who are exalted for having come as close to perfection as they did, or who are perceived as being perfect by those that still hold a reverence for them. But rather, this is more about what is occurring in your earth human field at this time regarding those gurus who are still alive, or those gurus who were recently alive. Because they espoused a contemporary wisdom, a wisdom which could be applied to the machinations and the practical considerations of the life that you're living right now. And these gurus were men, were women, who had a level of insight that was uncommon. And so they were able to share an understanding or cast light on a perspective which they had a glimpse of, which allowed others to consider. And when there was a readiness and there was a confluence of just the right energetics, just the right timing, then those that were exposed to that message have now elevated themselves in their understanding of the experiences and the life and themselves and so on. And so this is part of the mechanism of the humanity of being awakening to itself, realizing what it is, reaching a place where it is ready to cross the threshold into the fourth density. So this moment, when this occurs, will be the moment when the critical mass is reached. And so all of you are contributing to the accumulation of the singular concept of the human wisdom in all that you do. Because even if you are not someone that is perceived by the outer world as a master, as a guru, as a profound teacher, you are nonetheless contributing to the expanding understanding and wisdom and knowledge the humanity being has of itself, because you are the one being, and the role you play is substantial. So, even you, the individual, is a guru in some context, is a teacher in some context. However, there are those in your current environment and also from history that still were close enough to your date of birth that the information they shared is still somewhat contemporary and applicable. Yet those that are anointing themselves as the moral police of your society, of the arbiters of what can and can't be heard and read and seen and understood and known, they have an agenda which is not in alignment with this expansion of the human field of wisdom until it reaches a point of critical mass and begins the cascade which culminates in the transition into the fourth density. Instead, they are aligned with a vision which is much more insular, much more self-rewarding, and at the detriment of the greater humanity, because they seek power, they seek dominion, they seek wealth and authority. And they understand that when humanity has access to expanding wisdom, to new perspectives, to uncommon and enlightening knowledge, then this makes their job much more difficult. And so it is in their favour if this wisdom was removed from the human field, from the human context, and there could be no experience of it. Yet this presents them with the conundrum. How can they remove this information from availability so that they can ensure humanity's progress remains stunted and stagnant? If they were to just try to remove the wisdom, remove this insight and perspective, then this is going to raise suspicion, it's going to create pushback. Why are you trying to remove something from our understanding of the world which is universally agreed upon as an elevation of the way that we thought in the past? What are your motivations? So instead, they must come at the guru, come at the messenger, whoever it was that espoused that particular new frontier of understanding for the human field. If they are maligned in some way, then under this dogmatic Puritan approach to what is right and wrong, what is information and misinformation, what is moral, and so on, they can claim that a particular herald which contributed some substantial way to humanity's burgeoning wisdom was flawed and therefore should be entirely dismissed in all that they have contributed to the human field. And not only that, but also entirely excised from what is taught to children, from textbooks, from the minds of those that are coming up in the next generations, and should, as a birthright, have access to this higher wisdom, this elevated way of being, which was integrated and incorporated into the human wisdom field before their birth. It is a very natural progression that they then also would integrate this knowledge at a very young age. It would be part of the context of their experience so much that they wouldn't even really need to hear the words that were uttered or to read them into a book, but instead, just through the observation and experience of the life that they find themselves in, it would be endemic in that experience, and it would very naturally integrate in a passive way into their beingness. And so it would be then their duty to reach for new wisdoms, which are only attainable when standing on this platform, which has been made possible by this process of ever-increasing growth of the human wisdom field, done somewhat through the honouring of the messages and the messengers that have come before. So, when you see in your environment that there are those that are from history who are now being grossly maligned, even though as few as 5 years ago or 10 years ago, they were revered as great men and women who contributed to the totality of what your nations and people and cultures have become in a very profound and positive way. When you see these individuals being maligned and extracted from the discussion, excised from the pool of available information and perspectives, then understand it is unjustified. It is not done through some sincere desire to reach the highest morality and wisdom which humanity is capable of, but rather is done to prevent that from occurring, to ensure that the absolute opposite is what prevails. And so humanity instead descends into a level of lower wisdom, into a level of less profundity, greater stupidity, where atrocities and errors become more commonplace and occur on a grander scale. This is not unique in the human experience. There has been a rising and a lowering of humanity's combined wisdom throughout its transition to the place that it finds itself now. And invariably, the reason there has been a descent into a place of decreased wisdom is because those that have the power and the authority to decide what is disseminated, what is forbidden knowledge, what is allowed knowledge, what is information, what is misinformation, have universally decided that this information, some particular knowing, makes the greater population a threat to them and their agenda. And therefore, it must be removed. And even more so, those that espouse it, those that believe it, those that seek it, must be punished. And punished in a very extreme way, so that it leaves an echo, a vibration, which ripples through the population, so all can be aware that if you are to believe and espouse in these ideas, then the penalties will be harsh. And so it is better to just pretend they never existed. Never dare utter them to another person or share them in an open forum where it is monitored, recorded, and later can be used as a weapon against you. This is where humanity is finding itself once again. The rise of the new generation of tyrant now have at their disposal a new form of censorship, a new way which they can dominate humanity through the silencing of the wisdom which is your birthright. And this is the technocratic state that they have formed. The technology which is accessible to all of you so that you can exchange these ideas really should be an absolute gift of explosive growth to humanity. And for some short period, it was. But the tyrants, who never anticipated it would be used for user-created content, they expected, when they decided to give humanity access to this technology, that they would be able to dominate it in the same way that they have dominated newspapers, radio stations, cable news. And so all that got access to it would mostly be consuming information over which they had centralized control. Yet they were blindsided by this phenomenon of user-created content, where you started sharing with each other your own insights, your own ideas, and you began to become gurus for each other. And now it was possible to get online and have access to millions of gurus all around the world, all willing and able to contribute their small amount of leading edge wisdom, of new perspective, of some way of seeing the world and understanding what is occurring that had not yet occurred to you. This makes humanity powerful, and from the perspective of those that are wishing and trying to dominate, the cabal of darkness and its minion level. See this as very threatening. However, it is your duty as a human being to preserve your civilization and usher it into the future so that your progeny and the generations which are yet to come can inherit from you a functioning global civilization which is not shackled or weighed down or a slave master paradigm which gives them no possibility of reaching for the stars, of expanding into the heavens. So, you must continue to revere those that have been instrumental in your species' march forward. And all of them were flawed. All of them made mistakes. All of them had something about their personal life or their opinions or something which to some is repulsive, is unacceptable. But nonetheless, their contribution is significant. And therefore, you must deny this foisting of censorship from the ruling class, those that are trying to determine what it is to be a human being, rather than allowing humanity to find out for itself through the grassroots expression of its burgeoning understanding of itself, to very naturally, organically become the next version of humanity, day by day, week by week, decade by decade. Let us finish in this way. There are some that would say, I only have 10 years, 20 years, 25 years left of life. It seems hopeless. It seems such an obstacle to change the momentum as humanity heads towards a dark place where it will be ruled by a malevolent force that will act cruelly and without mercy. But it is some time until they reach that point. So why not just enjoy the time that I have now? Why just enjoy the rest of my life and let these problems, which are taking shape now, be something that the future generations have to deal with? Let them take care of it. While this is a tempting shrugging off of your civilizational responsibilities, inevitably, you will live the life which is coming if you do not play an active part, if you decide to just selfishly focus on one's own life in this lifetime, leaving what is coming for those in the future to deal with. You are condemning yourself because you are going to be alive in the future. You are not going to escape the reincarnation cycle if this takes place. And so if you allow your planetary experience to transform into a slave planet, then you will be incarnated as a slave. You will be incarnated into hell on earth. As you start to awaken about what you actually are, why you are here, then this means you start expanding your definition of self. So no longer are you just the being you see in the mirror, but you are the eternal, energetic, the infinite, immortal, invulnerable, that expands many lifetimes. And from this perspective of self as the expanded being, it now becomes more relevant and more important about what type of experiences you are going to have in your future incarnations. Do you want to be born into merciless slavery in the future? Do you want to have a life which is suffering within a body which has been transformed genetically to be weak, to be stupid, to suffer? And all that is organic about the human species has been expunged such that it is now just a drone species. And all creativity and love and beauty has been extinguished. Is this the experience you want for yourself? If it is not, then do something about it now. Contribute in some way. And relevant to this discussion, a very powerful way that you can contribute is to keep alive the message of the gurus that have come before you, the flawed men and women who espoused something which was enlightening for your species. Revere their legacy. Keep it alive to ensure that future generations are born into a culture that is so deep and rich in these wisdoms that when they are still very young people, they are already of a greater level of wisdom and understanding than you are now as an adult. And they will, bit by bit, generation by generation, create a future into which you will reincarnate to find yourself in a paradise surrounded by individuals that look upon you as themselves, that love you as themselves. And your every moment will be a nirvana of expansion, of understanding, of knowing your Creator. Thank you, and we love you. Thank you very much for making it to the end of another channeling session. I'm going to tell you a story today that actually happened this morning. I've started eating my dinner much earlier. About 4 p.m. in the afternoon, I'm eating my dinner. I'm just kind of experimenting with just changing my diet. Anyway, besides that. And I was feeding Bengo at the same time. But I'm finding that by the time I go to bed, Bengo's super hungry. And so when I let him outside in the evening before bed so he can do a pee, he's going into the garden and he's digging up some disgusting things in the garden. He's eating them. He comes back in, he's got mud all over his paws, mud all over his face, and I have to wash him. It's just like, it's not what you want to be doing before you go to bed. So last night, and it stinks. I don't know what he's eating, but it really stinks. So last night, I put him on the floor and like, okay, good night. And then during the night, he can't settle. And I know that if I put him on my bed, he will just fall asleep instantly. I don't particularly like to be doing it all the time. I don't want that to be his habit, that he can sleep on my bed every night. But last night he was keeping me awake, so I put him on the bed. And then when I woke up this morning, I looked at him and he was lying on his side, and right at his tail, there was a big brown puddle with chunks in it, right next to his butt. So you can imagine my immediate thought is, he's pooped on the bed. Oh no, he's pooped on the bed during the night. So I did what any responsible dog owner would do. My very first action was I went over and I stuck my nose like this far from it and went just to make sure that my theory was correct. I don't know why I would need to do that, but I did anyway. And to my delight, if you could be delighted under these circumstances, it wasn't poop, it was vomit. Slightly better. It's like a consolation prize. And what's happened is he's vomited and then he's turned around and he's gone to sleep. And so the vomit came out this end, but then he turned around and put his butt right next to the vomit. So it looks like the vomit came out the back end. So it looks like it's poop. And it was brown because he's digging something up in the yard and he's eating it covered in dirt. So the vomit was actually dirt. He did a big dirt vomit on my bed. I have a photo. I'm sure you'd love to see the photo. There it is. That's the photo of his dirt vomit, which looks suspiciously like it came out the butt diarrhea. But I'm happy to report it's not. Anyway, so that was my action and excitement for today. Thank you, Bengo, for keeping my life interesting. And I hope you enjoyed that one as well also. I love you, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.